Class 6, Science, Chapter 5. Separation of Substances. Animated Science. Separation of Substances. Separation means removal of substances from a mixture of two or more substances. For example, separating stones from rice, separating tea from tea leaves, churning milk to obtain butter. Purpose of separating things: to remove non-useful components, to remove impurities or harmful components, to obtain two different useful components, to group substances of different sizes. Methods of separation. Hand-picking. This method is used for separating large-sized impurities. Example, separation of stone or husk from rice, wheat, pulses, etc. Threshing. This method is used for separating edible cereal grains from stalks. Example, separation of cereal grains from stalk. Winnowing. Used to separate heavier and lighter components of a mixture by wind or by blowing air. Example, separation of lighter husk particles from heavier seeds of grain. Sieving. Sieving is used when components of a mixture have different sizes. Sieving allows the fine particles to pass through the holes of the sieve while the bigger impurities remain in the sieve. Example, separation of stones and pebbles from sand, separation of bran and impurities from flour. Other methods of separation. Sedimentation. Separation of two components in such a way that the heavier component settles down when water is added to it. Example, separation of sand from water, separation of oil from water. Decantation. Separation of two components that do not mix well with each other. For example, separation of sand and water. While sand settles down being heavier than water, the water forms the top layer, which is then separated by decantation. That is, pouring the top layer of water into another container. Filtration. Separation of solids from liquids either by using a filter paper or a strainer. For example, separating mud from water using a filter paper. Separating tea from tea leaves. Evaporation. Evaporation is used when we want to get back a substance that has been dissolved. When a solution is heated, the liquid or solvent evaporates, leaving behind the solid or solute as residue. Example, getting salt out of salty water. The salty water is put into evaporating basin or any shallow dish such as a saucer. It is left in a warm place and the water evaporates, leaving behind the salt crystals. Condensation. Condensation is the process by which a substance changes from the gas phase to the liquid phase. Water vapor condenses into water after making contact with the surface of a cold bottle. Condensation on a window during a rain shower. Separation of salt from sand. Salt can be separated from sand by using 4 methods of separation. Sedimentation. Keep the mixture of salt and sand in a beaker and add some water to this. Leave the beaker aside for some time. See the sand settling down at the bottom and the salty water is on top. The sand has settled down due to sedimentation. Decantation. This sand or the bottom layer can be separated from the salty water or the upper layer by decantation. The salty water is gently poured into another vessel. Evaporation. The decanted liquid is poured in a kettle and its lid is closed. The kettle is heated for some time till all the water boils off and evaporates due to evaporation. The residue left at the bottom of the kettle is salt. Condensation. When the water is still boiling in the kettle, take a metal plate with some ice on it. Hold the plate just above the spout of the kettle. Let all the water in the kettle boil off. When the steam comes in contact with the metal plate cooled with ice, it condenses and forms liquid water. The water drops that you observed falling from the plate are due to condensation of steam. Hence, in this way, we separated sand, salt, and water with the processes sedimentation, decantation, evaporation, and condensation. And saturated solution. A saturated solution is one in which no more of the substance can be dissolved. More of a substance can be dissolved in a solution by heating it. Now, can you guess which method should be used to separate the following substances? Stones from grain, mixture of pebbles and stones, mixture of dry sand with sawdust, or powdered dry leaves, mixture of tea and tea leaves,